Jai Shri Ram, everyone. I wanted to talk today about the importance of having dharmically based standards for things in society and in our life. And what I mean by that is this. I'll just give you the full story of how I arrived at this idea. I was watching a series of pravachans by one of my favorite gurus to watch about Ram and why we consider him the Maryada Purushottam, the ideal human being, and kind of, obviously giving the foundation of that, the background details from the Ramayana, and also refuting these kind of modern leftist, feminist, and other kinds of points that we hear raised by people in the modern day, that people are uncomfortable with Agni Pariksha, or they're uncomfortable with Ram sending Sita into, the forest, into Valmiki's ashram, and they claim that there's casteism in the Ramayana and all of these kinds of things based on modern ideas, right? And the reason that I say it's important to have dharmic standards is that if you judge the Ramayana or Mahabharata or anything from a different value system than modern secular liberalism through that lens, obviously it's going to look bad, because feminism and trying to turn different groups of castes against other groups of castes, and secularism and all of these kinds of ideas are very new in Indian society. They don't have backing in the Shastras. They don't even have backing in history prior to just a few hundred years ago in India. And so trying to judge Ram's interactions with Sita through the lens of feminism, obviously he's going to look bad there, because not because he is bad, not because he's oppressive, but because the feminist lens and the standards by which feminists use to judge men or judge traditional gender roles in society themselves are, from our perspective, obviously wrong. Now, the other issue here is this. The much deeper issue is that it's not really that we have a choice between dharma and kind of modern ways of doing things. The issue that we have that's so deep is that people in the modern day generally assume modern ideology to be right, and they take that to be their standard. And so right off the bat, any kind of inequality or difference between how men and women are treated, they're going to see as oppressive. Same thing with different castes. Same thing with having a monarchy instead of a democratic form of government. And so what we should really be asking people when because first, if we're being honest with ourselves, we know that people don't actually ask questions about these issues. They hurl accusations at Ram, at Krishna, at, Parshuram, and various other characters, both in the actual stories and, our acharyas and rishis and so on, right? Because of the fact that they have assumed that the modern Western secularist lens is the correct lens. This is the perspective by which they're going to look at everything. And so they're judging everything based on that. So when we're trying to be on the back foot, or when we find ourselves on the back foot saying, oh no, here is how we can actually prove that X figure is a real feminist, or X figure is a real, anti-caste egalitarian or something of that nature, we have to actually step back from that, ask the other party to step back and say, the mere fact that you're asking this particular question as opposed to just assuming that this standard is right and maybe asking a different kind of question, or asking a genuine question as opposed to hurling an accusation that's worded as a question, is because you happen to have been born and raised in this particular time and educated in a particular kind of educational system. And so when dharmic governance is gone, when the Gurukulam educational system is eroded away, when people don't have the overwhelming majority of Hindu society, at least that lives in urban areas, does not have a real meaningful grounding in their tradition, you have replaced those things with this kind of modern, westernized, secularist framework, and so you're using that to ask questions, right? Now, something that's also interesting is from a non-Hindu point of view, or at least Islam has figured this out, because you'll see that there are certain Islamic speakers, this one that I like to listen to sometimes called Yasir Qadhi, they have to field these questions about why the Prophet Muhammad married girls that were children and so on and so forth, right? This is a common thing that Islam is always questioned on, and Muhammad is questioned on, right? And something that I found very interesting in what he was saying is that, the mere question that you're asking this question specifically is because you're from this modern time period when, certain age group and certain, marrying a certain age group is considered frowned upon. When you look at people in Muhammad's time, you see that even though they criticized him for prophethood and for lying and for violence and for a variety of other things, you don't really see his contemporaries, or you don't at all. He was saying you don't at all see his contemporaries criticizing him for this. Now, the degree to which that is true, I really don't know. But I think that the broader point that he's making is also something that we need to understand, because we can't justify our traditions and our ideas and our values through the framework of someone else. It's only from a dharmic framework that we can judge our tradition to be correct, and obviously that's true for any tradition and any ideology. If you judge modern Western secularism from a dharmic lens, it looks very degenerate and immoral and harmful. If you judge it from its own lens, it looks like the greatest system that man has ever invented, and that everyone that came before that system were just a bunch of heathen barbarians who wanted to enslave women and kill people. So, I just want to stress the eternal importance of understanding that even the basic values, basic assumptions, things that we think are good or not, those also come from a set of assumptions that we hold, and people from different cultures or people who were indoctrinated with different ideologies are going to see that differently. And I wanted to connect that to this, not just about dharma, but about something else that I see a lot, especially in Advaitin circles, is this obsession that people have with trying to say every single ritual and practice that we have in Hinduism is deeply based on science. And so as modern science progresses, they're going to find more and more things which prove our practices and traditions to be valid. Now, again, I think if you're looking to the West, whether it's secular liberalism or materialistic science, to justify what we're doing and why we should do it, this is a losing battle, because you're using someone else's framework, you're using someone else's epistemology, someone else's entire system for how to judge things and determine what's right and wrong, what's good and bad. So naturally, what we are doing is not going to appear as perfect and as good as whatever they're doing, because it's their standards and it's their framework. And so then you will have to also cast aside certain things from our own tradition that you deem unscientific or backward or whatever the case may be. And I say that I see this in Advaitin circles a lot, because you see a lot of this kind of messaging of quantum physics as if quantum physics equals Advaita Vedanta with scientific language. Now, I am not educated whatsoever on quantum physics, so I have no clue as to what the degree of validity to that is. But what I do know is this: Adi Shankaracharya and any of our Shankaracharya or any of our acharyas that preached Advaita Vedanta, they didn't have a materialistic, modern scientific way of looking at things. And so trying to say that, oh, this is true science and, quantum physics is proving what Shankaracharya taught, so on and so forth, this is not a smart battle. It's not practical. It's not reasonable. People just have this obsession with science, and they think that the word science and the idea of science is a pure good. It's higher than dharma, or science equals truth somehow, and they want to prove that everything is scientific. You see people doing the same thing with Ayurveda. You see them doing the same thing with comparing astronomy and Jyotish and all of these other kinds of things. And I think that nobody in ancient times held to any of these beliefs or philosophies or practices because they thought, one day people with lab coats and formulas and beakers and test tubes are going to prove that this stuff is right, because you can prove that these things are valid by purely materialistic means without having an Atma-centered or a Paramarthik or Dharmic or whatever kind of worldview and value system with which to judge whatever you're doing. And I'll leave you, I mentioned Islam, I'll mention the other Abrahamic foe, Christianity. There's a prominent, or was a prominent Christian author that a lot of people are familiar with, C.S. Lewis. I believe he also wrote The Lord of the Rings, or one of those series. And he had this one book called Mere Christianity, where he talked about basically why he became a Christian. And by became a Christian, of course, Christians take that to mean not just someone who was born in a Christian family, but someone who spiritually, emotionally, intellectually came to the conviction that the beliefs of Christianity are true. And so he said that in this book, he says, I don't believe that Christianity is true because I see that it's true. I believe Christianity is true because through it I see the world. It was something like that. I'm really not sure of the exact words, but the point that he was making is that Christianity is the perspective through which he looks at everything in his life. Science, morality, ethics, history, social interactions, family, all of those kinds of things. He is viewing it through a Christian perspective, and this is what proves to him that Christianity is true. Not because he used a scientific perspective or, some other non-Christian perspective to examine Christianity like some kind of cold-hearted scientist or person that is in a debate club that needs to, formulate arguments for or against some kind of conclusion, but because this is the worldview that he's adopted, and this is what's helped him make sense of the entire world. So that's all I've got for you guys today. Please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Jai Shri Ram.